Renee, what's going on?
Hello, Rory. How are you?
How's Jersey?
It's wonderful. It's warm, but I'm happy because it's my birthday month. September 18th is my birthday, so I always love September.
What you got going on for your birthday, though?
I'm actually going to be doing a live news segment in New York City for Pix 11, so that'll be really fun. And then we have a dinner planned in the city after.
So, Renee, we're here to talk about communication. I feel like communication is one of the biggest things. Networking is a good thing, but we have to start with communication and the foundations. And this is how we got to doing this podcast here. What does communication mean to you? Because you're a master communicator yourself.
Communication to me means connection with ourselves and one another. And everything starts with communication. And when we learn to master this skill, we become limitless.
What does limitless mean for you? Because I feel like some people hear that word limitless, not the movie with Bradley Cooper,
No,
but
no.
limitless.
The opportunities become wide open. The ability to reach the dreams and goals that you've been talking about for all those years but haven't put action towards, those become possible. When we know how to communicate, how to create genuine connections with one another, that's when the magic happens. And I know that from my own experience. Before I became a connection expert, I was a professional actress for years on Broadway and film and TV. And one of the greatest opportunities of my life came about because of the power of communication. In 2013, I was playing the role of Frankie Valli's wife, Mary Delgado, in Jersey Boys on Broadway. And we got word that Clint Eastwood was going to be directing the film version of the musical. And they happened to be looking for someone to play my role of Mary Delgado. And truth be told, at first, I didn't even think twice about it. I said, they're going to hire some A-list celebrities out of Los Angeles to play these roles. Marissa Tomei is going to play my role. But then they started calling people in from our cast to audition. And an audition, for those of you who don't know what that means, it's like an interview. And every girl I knew on Broadway was getting an audition for the role of Mary. And my agent calls me one day and she says, Renee, I'm sorry, I don't know what the problem is, but they said they won't see you for the role of Mary, but they'll give you an audition for one of the smaller roles, one of the angels who sings My Boyfriend's Back. And I remember hanging up the phone, Rory, and being like, what? Like, God, what are you trying to tell me? I'm playing this role at the highest level I could be on Broadway, and that doesn't warrant me an audition? So I sat there for a little while. I communicated with myself, step one of becoming a master communicator. I felt my feelings, and then I threw my hands up. I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to still go in and audition for one of the angels. I'm in the audition room that day, and the casting director says, Renee, would you like to sing the song first or read the scene for one of the angels? And at that moment, I heard this quiet little voice within say, you have to do this. It feels too right. And I looked at the casting director in the eyes and I said, Jeff, I was really hoping to come in and read for the role of Mary Delgado. And he looks at me and he goes, I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, amazing, awesome. So I leave there that day feeling complete gratitude because I got the chance. That's all I wanted. A few weeks later, my agent calls me. She says, you're Mary Delgado in the movie. Clint Eastwood loves you. And I was like, woo! It was like one of the most surreal moments of my life, Rory. Cut to the first day of filming. Never being on a TV or film set before. Again, it felt like jumping off of a cliff, but I heard that quiet voice again say, you know what you're doing. Clint Eastwood hired you. Trust in your talent and leap. And I filmed that first day, and that day and every day that followed, I would sit and eat lunch with Clint Eastwood every day and pick his brain like a sponge, ask him everything I could. And a month into the film, I'm eating lunch once again because eating's my favorite thing to do. And I'm sitting with Clint Eastwood and one of the producers of the film when they start talking about how Clint knew he wanted me for the role when he saw me perform on Broadway. And I said, oh, do you guys want to hear a funny story? I never got an audition for Mary Delgado. The only reason I got to read the scenes is because I opened up my big mouth in the room and asked. And the two of them looked at each other. They said, well, what do you mean? We requested you. We said, we want the girl from the Broadway show to come into this audition. Imagine my surprise. I came to find out that day that there was a middle person, casting associate, juggling a few films at once, and just dropped the ball on having me come into audition. And I share this with you, Rory, because this is such a representation of the power of communication. If I did not have the ability and the confidence to speak up in the room that day, I could have missed my once in a lifetime opportunity sitting in the movie theater watching Jersey Boys instead of on the screen in Jersey Boys, walking about my life with sadness and regret, never knowing Clint Eastwood was waiting for me to walk through that door.
I love that you say that because there's so much that comes up for me. There's overcoming adversity. There's understanding that we have to practice patience and perseverance. And 3, knowing that you have that one shot of a lifetime. And so many people get that shot, but they tend to fall underneath the bar because of, could be product of, environment, circumstance, never been, celebrated, and they don't know where to go from. And that's the reason why we have this episode here, because it's all about communication. It's all about overcoming adversity, getting those pre-jitters out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you speak so clear with everything that you led up to. So I know that the audience that are watching or listening to this are going to be like, okay, well, that's my once in a lifetime shot. I could be a Renee. I could be a Rory,
Yes.
put your best foot forward, things like that.
Yes. And remember this, if it's scary, that's okay. If you feel nervous, that's okay. But remember this, if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. And think about it this way, flip the script in your brain to say, okay, oh man, this is so scary to tell that person I love them, or to speak up about something that's making me uncomfortable, or to ask a question, ask for what I want. But if I don't do it, what's the alternative? And I'll tell you what the alternative is: wasted energy, wasted time, which is the one thing none of us can get back in this life. And number 3, missed opportunities. And I don't know about you, but the worst feeling for me is when I let an opportunity slip by and I want to kick myself. That feeling of regret for me is worse than anything else. I would rather ask and they say no. At least I could go, you know what, Renee? Good job. You did everything you could. You tried. But when we don't give it all we have, if we don't do what I call taking imperfect action, taking that action even when you're afraid, even when you're scared, then what you do is you start to lack that belief in yourself. Because then you go, well, Renee, you're just going to chicken out. You're not going to tell that person how you really feel. You never do. Let's start to show up for ourselves and say, no, you know what? I show up even when it's scary. I show up even when I don't know the next 5 steps after the first one. And when we do that, slowly but surely, we develop little nuggets of confidence. Little one here, little one there. And before we know it, we've created this armor of self-belief. And now it's like, boom, I know what Renee was talking about when she said limitless. That's the feeling.
I love that. I love that. We're in this digital age, right? Heavy in this digital age, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, social audio, all these different things. Where do you feel like communication is really subpar in that development area, and why so many people are, how do I say this, lacking that communication effort?
We have more outlets to communicate than ever before, yet in so many ways find ourselves more disconnected than ever before. And that is because there are so many different vessels through which to communicate that a lot of gray area for miscommunication exists. Think about it. You send a text to someone, that's words and words alone. We can't read tone through a text. And because we're moving so fast, Rory, my best-selling book, Becoming a Master Communicator, came out last year, and The subtitle of it is Balancing New School Technology with Old School Simplicity. And it's all about these practices and tools to learn how to merge these worlds of all of our digital devices, all of the different applications, with that more old school, simpler way of communicating, face to face, a phone call, or even a handwritten letter. When we learn the right time and place to communicate through digital means and the right time and place to put those devices aside, that is when we start to become master communicators. And the problem that I'm seeing now is we send a text, and what happens? You get my text and you read it and you go, oh, well, Renee seems like she's a little frustrated. I bet it's because I asked her that question on the podcast. And then you text me back from a place of assuming that was my intention. And before you know it, we're going back and forth in a texting disagreement, and we haven't even spoken. I call this in the book assumption animosity.
Mm.
Animosity from assuming what you think to be true. And how often do you do it? I'm going to raise my hand. I'm guilty of it. That's why I could write a book about it. That's why I speak on this, because we are moving so fast every day. We have so many digital distractions that are pulling our focus from the here and now. So what do? We send that text without looking it over. Meanwhile, autocorrect has changed it to mean something completely different. And then we look back and we're like, uh-oh. So there's just all of this gray area for miscommunication to exist because we're not taking the time to do what I call consciously connecting. Sitting back, and before we send that text, before we write that email and click send, ask ourselves, does this message match me and my intention? That's it. Ask yourself that question. Does this message match me and my intention? And a second question before you post on social media or you send out that WhatsApp message, ask yourself this: if you really want to be someone who's authentic, and my master communicators, we are authentic, if nothing else. The way to make sure you are being your authentic self is to ask yourself, would I be comfortable saying this in person? Let me ask you, how many times have you seen a friend of yours that you know on a deep level write a Facebook post and you read it and you go, whoa, who wrote that and what have they done with my friend? Because I know they would never have the confidence to say that in person. That is something that I refer to as keyboard confidence.
Mm.
Raw, unfiltered confidence that only happens when behind a screen and typing on a keyboard. And this is dangerous because, again, we're being one person online and then another person when we meet you face to face. And master communicators are the same person no matter where we meet you. You are that same individual no matter which vessel you're communicating through.
Wow. Nothing but facts. You know what I mean? I should hit the soundboard. But you speak so much. The art of storytelling also too with communication. So that like round of applause to you there. And you see it happen so much where I've kind of switched the dial a little bit in my communication patterns. Instagram and text messaging and Signal or WhatsApp, all voice note communication now. If it's stuff that's quick, you know what? Yeah, you can drop that text. Voice note communication for me does not blur any lines. People can check your tone. They understand what's going on. And the ones that listen, it lands a little bit better, right? It lands a little bit better. And that's what I do with one of my friends. We're back and forth. We'll be 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 15-minute voice notes because we may not have the time to meet in person or connect on the phone, but we never blur lines. Yes. And we always pick up to where we are going to. And I think a lot of people don't want to do this because, like you say, they're so comfortable being behind the screen, right? Oh, I can just stay behind the screen and shelter and kind of have that it's I'll say cowardly act. I'm very straight to the point, right? But you got to stop doing that.
Yes.
Got to stop doing that, because how do you simply sit here and build relationships when you don't want to know how to communicate?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Everything, I want to reiterate this, everything in our lives starts with communication. Every facet of your life. And you can pull anything out, and I'll tell you how it ties back to communication. Oh, you want to lose those last 10 pounds? Guess what? You better have strong communication with yourself to check in with yourself and get honest. All right, Renee, where are you struggling a little bit? Where's your weakness? Every time that chocolate bar comes out, you're running for the pantry, right? Getting clear in the communication with yourself. Then being honest and clear in your communication to your doctor, to your trainer at the gym, because if you don't know how to communicate with them where you fell short the last 3 times you went on a diet, you're never going to get to that goal. Everything starts with communication. And I love to refer to the Wizard of Oz when I talk about this idea of keyboard confidence. You know, the beautiful legendary movie, The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy and her friends venture to the land of Oz to meet the great and powerful wizard. And they get there, Rory, and they meet him. And then when they walk in, they're all like shaking in their boots because they see this huge face, this big persona with big beady eyes and a deep voice, smoke, lights. And they're like, oh my goodness, they're so intimidated. And then all of a sudden, Toto pulls back the curtain to reveal the real wizard, and we see him for who Dorothy refers to as the an insecure humbug. And out walks this man who is in a complete opposite physical stature than the wizard we just saw. He's a bit meek, more introverted. But isn't it interesting that the wizard could only help Dorothy and her friends when he did it from his authentic self? He only helped them when he stepped back from the curtain and put the lights and the smoke away, and he was his real self. The same is true for us, and I love to share this because it's so important we start to take this into consideration in our lives because technology is only getting more advanced, my friends. AI is starting to take over the world, but let me tell you what AI can't take over or replace is that true human connection. And we can only connect with one another in a real way when we're doing it from our authentic selves.
Well said. Well said. So the ones that are listening to this, the ones that are more to themselves, I like to say recluse. They listen to you speak. They listen to I speak. They do all of this. They listen to us. What's that first initial step? You talk about the book that you wrote last year.
Yes.
Is it that book they should be picking up, or is there
Yes.
more that starts with the journey?
Yes, I recommend picking up the book, not because it's my book. I mean, of course, it's my book. I want you to pick it up. But I'm all about simple, to the point, quick, easy tools that you can implement now. I'm not trying to give you exercises that are going to work in 6 months. This book, Rory, which has been endorsed by people like Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, Clint Eastwood is on the cover with me. The reason they've endorsed this book is because they understand how important simple tools and processes are to start to get you comfortable with this authentic communication. So once you pick up the book, it's so great because it's a workbook as well. There's a reflection section in each chapter for you to utilize what I call that old school simplicity way of communicating, putting pen to paper. And one of the most powerful practices, my beautiful people listening who consider themselves introverts or a recluse, as you say, wake up every day. And instead of doing what most of us do, which is roll over and grab our phone on the nightstand and start checking into the lives of others by scrolling on social media and comparing ourselves to their perceived reality, instead, leave those phones and devices aside. Ask yourself this one question: how am I feeling? Then take 5 to 10 minutes and put pen to paper and allow yourself to answer. Why? Because what this does is gets you in communication with yourself first and foremost before any other external interaction. And this is powerful because what it does is gives you clues and insight as to what's really going on within. And once you're clear on that, then you can start to have those real connections with other people. Because let me tell you, when you read back what you wrote, sometimes it's enlightening. I've had times where I read back what I wrote and I'm like, oh, I thought I was over that argument with my husband, but apparently I'm not because I'm still writing about it. So get in that connection with yourself first and foremost, because this is one of the things that I see us as a society missing the mark on more than anything. Why? Because we have so many things to distract us. Oh, I'm feeling sad. I don't want to think about it. I'm going to just numb out and stream a whole season of a show on Netflix. Or I'm feeling really uneasy about something. I don't want to think about it. I'm going to go on social media. And we're moving further and further away from ourselves. We need to get back to ourselves, because when we do, that's where the beauty happens. That's where things like what happened to me in the audition room, where I started to hear that quiet voice of my soul speaking to me. That's what starts to happen when we get in communication with ourselves. And when you listen to that quiet voice, baby, that's your inner compass. That's always guiding you with exactly where to go, what to say, and who to say it to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that a lot of people run to the excuses, their cop outs. You know what I mean? You speak about your husband, just merely saying like getting over that conversation, that argument. And I feel like the plethora of topics I talk about here on this podcast, overcoming adversity, could be dating also too. The big communication factor is like in dating also too. You don't see it, right? That book that you wrote, that book helps with that also too, right?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
there's a whole chapter on relationships. You'll hear my whole story of how when my husband and I first started dating, I mean, I had to put the cards on the table right away and say, listen, one of my deal breakers is communication.
Mm,
So if you're not willing to speak up about what's going on, you're not willing to talk about your feelings, us have that connection and conversation, that's going to be a problem, right? And again, that goes back to the power of speaking up. Clarity is power. And I know so often, I know this just from my research, just from speaking to so many of my friends, my clients, we're so afraid to rock the boat. What if they don't like that part of me when I share that? I don't want them to not love me back if I say I love you. But remember, my friends, we have one life to live. One life. So why not go big or go home? And even if that person says, well, I'm not feeling the same way, guess what? It's going to hurt. Ooh, you're going to feel that pit in your stomach, but at least you're going to know. And then you're not wasting a month, a year, 10 years with someone that you're not meant to be with because they don't see you for the beautiful person you are.
that's so true because you see so many men, women say, oh, the person I'm dating or the person I'm seeing, they don't like to communicate. Right. And it's just like, well, why are you there? You
Yes.
can't say that sometimes to certain people because then they'll instantly put their heels on the back and they get offended. Oh, and it's like, well, you can't be like that.
No.
You got to sit within a lot of your things. Right. And I think that it also comes down to self awareness. If you're not self aware, you're always going to subject to the things that are not elevating, that are not showing complete evolution of who you are or yourself or the person that you're wanting to date. You get what I mean? And it starts with you first. Sitting in that ability to where it's like being alone, I like to say. Date yourself if it comes down to dating. I don't want to switch it into a dating episode, but we're there. But it's
Yeah.
just like those little things that are going to amplify to find the right person, because communication is one of the biggest things. Like when you're meeting somebody for the first time, second time, and you guys are starting to get to know each other and there's back and forth communication, there's a lot you can understand. So, okay, I can say this in my certain tonality. This person knows where I'm coming from. If you don't have communication and you kind of like your authentic self 3 months, 6 months down the road, somebody might look at you and be like, okay, you're just a little startling. But you never built that. You never put all the ingredients in the bowl and start mixing it together to where you get that, ability to say, okay, we're going to put this in the oven, we're going to bake. And then out comes that good piece of cake or whatever you're looking to do.
Yes. And I refer to the mental ruminations that we put ourselves through. We all do it, right? Oh, but what if Rory doesn't really want me on the podcast? And what if, he didn't like what I said, so maybe he doesn't even share the episode, right? Those mental ruminations, I call that the 3-act play. And it's a really great way to look at that mental activity that goes on, because what we're doing is, again, we're going back to those power players of wasted time and wasted energy instead of asking, right? And it's, again, it seems, oh, common sense, Renee. Well, common sense is not so common. And that fear and that loud voice that feels like it's trying to deter us, we listen more to that than we do to that inner part of ourselves. That is the truest part of us. That is our gut instincts, our inner compass, telling us, yeah, Renee, just reach out to Rory and ask him. Instead of, but I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't, if he doesn't want to, and then, and before we know it, we're exhausted. We've gone around the bush 12 times and we haven't even communicated with that person about the thing that we're thinking about.
Absolutely.
And that leads to so many miscommunications in our relationships, whether personal or professional. And then it leads us in limbo. And again, we don't have that time to waste as master communicators that we want to become. We don't have time to waste time. We want to get right to the heart of a communication matter. So this is a really fun, silly little rhyme I made up to get you out of that loop. When my brain starts spinning like a ball, I must stop and give them a call. So like when you're caught in that loop, whatever it is, I'm telling you, it works. This little rhyme, when my brain starts spinning like a ball, I must stop and give them a call. And that could mean, like what Rory shared, sending a voice memo or picking up the phone or knocking on their door if they live close to. Like cut the mental ruminations right at the source, because you don't have time for it. You have a life to live. You have dreams to reach. You have the next level to get to, and that doesn't happen when we're caught in those loops.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like, there's so much that people can learn in this episode. There's a lot. Pen, paper, phone, however you're listening to this, however you're viewing this, get that separate piece of paper, pen to paper, and just go support the creator. Go support Renee. Go support the book. I know I'm going to support the book. But my question to you about the book is it in audio form?
It show is, my friend. And I'm the one. Hey, yeah. And I am narrating, so that's fun. So if you enjoyed this episode and you download the audiobook, it'll be me again. And I'll accompany you on your drives. And yeah, I just feel such passion about sharing the message of this book. And that's why I've been doing so many live news segments, because everywhere I go, no matter who I talk to, every newscaster I talk to, every journalist, they're like, yeah, Renee, wow, communication is the one thing lacking in this world. I'm like, I know. And guess what? It's only going to get more and more important that we learn how to master our communication, because we're human beings. We can never forget that. As AI starts to take over, we must ground ourselves in that real communication and creating genuine connections with one another. So yes, grab the book, grab the audiobook.
Before we get out of here, one of the things you talk about AI, and I spin it back to this, it's like, what happens when, God forbid, all the cell towers were just to go down for, say, 30 days? Then what do people do? It happened over here in Canada back last year, right? Like, it was on one of our major networks. I had to sit in a McDonald's on Wi-Fi because of the time to really connect with a lot of different people. The ones that checked in, I was like, yo, that's what's up, because those are the people in your everyday basis. You know what I mean? That reached out, hey, man, I called you, your phone's off. Like, you good? Like, listen, this is what's going on. You know what I mean? The whole grid's down. So I keep this in mind to people and saying, like, even if you know where a person lives, if the whole grid goes down, you're going to have to find a way to connect with people, or you're just going to sit there in your apartment, or you're going to sit there in your house and just be, oh, guess what? I'm off with the world. Let me just unplug with the world. No, because that person you could be dating, that person that you could be in a business relationship with, may want to hear from you. Show up to their office. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because I think people would appreciate that a little bit more. Don't be selfish. Don't simply sit here and take it upon yourself and be like, I'll talk to them tomorrow. I'll talk to them in a week. You don't do that. That's not how you build relationships.
No. Remember, by learning how to consciously connect in this digitally distracted world, you will create those real connections that lead to the impact you want to make, the income you want to have, and the relationships that you want to have. So start taking this into account in your everyday life in little ways. Find times to unplug, to recharge yourself, to put pen to paper, to write somebody a handwritten letter and put that bad boy in snail mail. You want to talk about creating a real genuine connection? Try that. Because that is that old school way of communicating, where we don't need a device. We don't need an outside arm to help us besides that pen and piece of paper. So yes, learning how to consciously connect in this digitally distracted world is of paramount importance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where can everybody check you out? Where can they grab the book? And what's up and coming for the next 4 months?
Yes. You can grab my book on Amazon.com, Becoming a Master Communicator, and you can grab the audio version if that's better for you. But I'm all over social media at I am Renée Marino on Instagram. My website is reneemarino.com. So please come say hello. I'd love to connect. And yeah, the next few months, Rory, are full of wonderful speaking gigs. I'm going to Italy in a couple weeks to speak about becoming a master communicator. And I'm going to be in Atlantic City for my Jersey people at the Atlantic City Convention Center in October for an event called Thrive. And I'm one of the featured speakers. So yeah, there's a lot of wonderful connections brewing where I get to communicate this message that everything starts with communication. And when we learn to master this skill, we become limitless.
I love that. And I love your message. So keep going, keep on pushing. Sky's the limit for you. I feel it. Everything's landing that you say. And I feel like it's just a matter of time before you see all the hard work that pays off even more. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much. You just gave me chills. I appreciate that.
It's always love and peace.
Love and peace. Thank you for having me, Rory.